Hey folks, thanks for watching my monologues. In case you haven't heard, I'm told there's an election coming up pretty soon. In some areas, there's a lot of violence and civil unrest. If you're in the market for personal protection for yourself or your family, I'd encourage you to visit Guns Etc. Guns Etc. is 10,200 square feet and they have product. And they're getting new product all the time. They'll work with you to get the exact type of protection that fits your needs. Stop by their store in Mesa or visit gunsetcetera.com where you'll have access to over $400 million worth of firearms and accessories. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back. Happy September 23rd, 2020. There are always reasons for things. Or as Peter Falk put it in The In-Laws, oh, there's reasons. I mean, I don't just do things. There's always a valid reason. When you hear Joe Biden speak heartfully and tearfully of his son, Beau, you wonder once in a while why he doesn't talk about his son, Hunter. Now, I know there's a general rule that in politics, family is supposed to be off limits. But what if when the family is grown, adult, and engaged in public work? What if when a candidate puts their family into play? One of the curiosities, one of the many, during the Ukraine investigation was how Joe Biden got to say once that the involvement of Hunter was thoroughly investigated and there was nothing to the story. The mainstream media never asked what or where that investigation was. They just dropped it. Joe Biden got to say it was investigated. There was nothing to it, and they dropped it. Quite a luxury. But then there was the Iowa voter who confronted Joe on this, and Joe called him a damned liar. Then went on to say to him, quote, "You want to check on my shape? Let's do push-ups together. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do. Let's take an IQ test," close quote. I'm guessing Joe Biden wouldn't offer that now. But there was an investigation. Finally, a real one. And the results came out this morning. I quote from the Daily Wire. A bombshell report from the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs and the Committee on Finance makes a series of damning new allegations against Hunter Biden, the son of Democratic presidential nominee. That's the headline. Guess what, by the way? As of 8:08 this morning, you would not read about it at the websites of CNN, the Washington Post, or the New York Times. I stopped checking on the others, and then shortly thereafter, the stories out of Louisville, Kentucky, took over the rest of the news feeds. The New York Times, prior to the Brianna Taylor story, after several reports on the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, put on its front page something about John Bolton, his book in the White House. Trying to re-gin that story up, I guess. Maybe in a month they'll try to revive the Woodward book, too. Might as well try and revive stories if there's still some milking to do. Old stories, nothing stories, when they have come and gone and yet not quite done the damage the original people or the media wanted. The Washington Post did the same thing this morning with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and then this, I kid you not, talking of old stories where they think there's still some milking to do. This headline, quote, "Allegations of racism have marked Trump's term, becoming key issue as election nears," close quote. Honestly, how many times over 4 years have we been treated to that headline and similar? Maybe that's why we call this all fake news. It's just not new. But why not try to revive the story? Enough people haven't gotten the message yet, I guess. Donald Trump is a racist. I mean, Joe Biden still says it was Donald Trump's praise of white supremacists in Charlottesville that led him to decide he had to run for president, which means his entire run is based on a fraud. I mean, how do you say that a man who said, quote, "neo-Nazis and the white nationalists should be condemned totally," close quote? How do you say a man who said that praised white supremacists? Only if you live in the world of Lewis Carroll's, I guess, or George Orwell's. At CNN, you don't get the Hunter story, but you got, quote, "Harry and Meghan weigh in on the upcoming presidential election," close quote. I guess we couldn't find the children of Prince Rainier of Monaco. So this is what I mean, as I said yesterday, when I say it's harder to be a conservative than a liberal in America. We constantly have to tell people the news ourselves, while the major media buries it and instead gives us the old razzle-dazzle of important things like Meghan Markle's views on the election. Billy Flynn, the attorney in the musical Chicago, explained it all perfectly. Give him the old razzle-dazzle, razzle-dazzle him, give him an act with lots of flash in it, and the reaction will be passionate. Give him the old hocus-pocus, beat and feather him. How can they see with sequins in their eyes? So here are some of the report's key findings that once upon a time might have interested the folks at CNN, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. You know, back before they became the communications arm of the Democratic Party. In early 2015, the former acting deputy chief of mission at the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, Ukraine, George Kent, raised concerns to officials in Vice President Joe Biden's office about the perception of a conflict of interest with respect to Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board. Kent's concerns went unaddressed, and in 2016 he emphasized in an email to his colleagues, quote, "The presence of Hunter Biden on the Burisma board was very awkward for all U.S. officials pushing an anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine," close quote. In October 2015, senior State Department official Amos Hochstein raised concerns with Vice President Biden himself, as well as with Hunter Biden, that Hunter Biden's position on Burisma's board enabled Russian disinformation efforts and risked undermining U.S. policy in Ukraine. The awkwardness for Obama administration officials continued well past the Obama presidency. Former Secretary of State John Kerry had knowledge of Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board, but when asked about it at a town hall event in Nashua, New Hampshire in December of 2019, Kerry lied. He said, "I had no knowledge about any of that. None. No." Evidence to the contrary is detailed. Former Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs Victoria Nuland testified that confronting oligarchs would send an anti-corruption message in Ukraine. Kent told the committees that Zlochevsky was an odious oligarch. However, in December 2015, instead of following U.S. objectives of confronting oligarchs, Vice President's staff advised him to avoid commenting on Zlochevsky and recommended he say, "I'm not going to get into naming names or accusing individuals." Hunter Biden was serving on Burisma's board when Zlochevsky allegedly paid a $7 million bribe to officials serving under Ukraine's prosecuting general Vitaly Yarema to shut the case against Zlochevsky. Kent testified that this bribe occurred in December 2014, 7 months after Hunter joined Burisma's board. And after learning about it, he and the resident legal advisor reported the allegations to the FBI. Hunter Biden was a U.S. Secret Service protectee from January of 2009 to July 8, 2014. A day before his last trip as a protectee, Time published an article describing Burisma's ramped-up lobbying efforts to U.S. officials and Hunter's involvement in Burisma's board. Before ending his protective detail, Hunter Biden received Secret Service protection on trips to multiple foreign locations, including Moscow, Beijing, Paris, Seoul, Tokyo, Milan, Florence, and many others. In addition to the over $4 million paid by Burisma for Hunter Biden's and Archer's board memberships, Hunter Biden, his family, and Archer received millions of dollars from foreign nationals with questionable backgrounds. Archer received $142,000 from Kenjis Rakishev of Kazakhstan, purportedly for a car, the same day Vice President Joe Biden appeared with Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk and addressed Ukrainian legislators in Kiev regarding Russia's actions in Crimea. Hunter Biden received a $3.5 million wire transfer from Elena Baturina, the wife of the former mayor of Moscow. Hunter Biden opened a bank account with Gong Guangdong to fund a $100,000 global spending spree with James Biden and Sarah Biden. Hunter Biden had business associations with Yi Jianming, Gong Wendong, and other Chinese nationals linked to the Communist government and the People's Liberation Army. Those associations resulted in millions of dollars in cash flow. Hunter Biden paid non-resident women who were nationals of Russia or other Eastern European countries and who appear to be linked to an Eastern European prostitution or human trafficking ring. Close quote. There's a lot more. As David Rehoboy tweeted, there is no scenario wherein the son of the vice president legitimately receives million-dollar wires from the wife of a foreign politician, the only billionaire female in Russia. But of course, we must continually be told Russia influenced the Trump campaign in 2016. But of course, Donald Trump is a racist. But of course, Donald Trump will break norms by nominating a Supreme Court justice when a vacancy occurred or any other day of the week. As Nancy Pelosi said, we could impeach him every day. But of course, we all know better, don't we? We see through this. I know we do. The question is, what of people who don't follow the stories as we do? Well, that's our job here. When asked how we expand the message, here's your means. You have not given up your First Amendment rights to speak and write. But now you know perhaps why the left is so committed to canceling and to censoring. As I say, or as Peter Falk says in The In-Laws, there's always reasons. There's always a valid reason. And that, among others, is why we do take the nomination of a new Supreme Court justice so seriously. After all, the First Amendment, indeed almost all of our rights, are on the line. They've been put there by the left. Take it seriously. They do. Now, as I said, a few words on the news out of Kentucky. I suppose I may sound like a bit of a broken record here, but those who understand the fallibility and imperfectibility of man, unlike in utopian socialism, understand things could be a lot better. Things can and do go wrong. Obviously, things went very wrong in the events that led to the death of Brianna Taylor. If her boyfriend didn't fire on police, the police likely would have not fired back. If the whereabouts of Brianna's ex-boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover, who the police were looking for and had a warrant for, were better known, the police would have never gone to Brianna's apartment. And there are probably tens or hundreds of other decisions that might have been better made as well. Mostly, I think, Jamarcus Glover's, but others as well. And if they had gone differently, Brianna would most likely be alive today. That all said, we take for granted the normalcy of a city having to shut down over an impending grand jury decision. But that's what Louisville did this morning, fully shut down, went on an alert, called in the National Guard in fear of riots. And we just all take that as normal. It's not normal. It has become normalized. That is what is ongoingly unhealthy here. I probably sound like a broken record on this too, but we ignore Abraham Lincoln at so much of our peril. Starting with his Lyceum address, delivered as early as 1838, he warned about a moment of anarchy going on in America, then not wholly unlike what is going on here now. He said, quote, "When men take it in their heads today to hang gamblers or burn murderers, they should recollect that in the confusion usually attending such transactions, they will be as likely to hang or burn someone who is neither a gambler nor a murderer as one who is, and that acting upon the example they set, the mob of tomorrow may and probably will hang or burn some of them by the very same mistake. And not only so, the innocent, those who have ever set their faces against violations of laws in every shape, alike with the guilty, will fall victim to the ravages of mob law." And thus it goes on, step by step, till all the walls erected for the defense of the persons and properties of individuals are trodden down and disregarded. But all this is even not the greatest of evils. By such examples, by instances of the perpetrators of such acts going unpunished, the lawless in spirit are encouraged to become the lawless in practice. And having been used to no restraint but dread of punishment, they thus become absolutely unrestrained. Having ever regarded government as their deadliest bane, they make a jubilee of the suspension of its operations and pray for nothing so much as its total annihilation. While on the other hand, good men, men who love tranquility, who desire to abide by the laws, and who enjoy their benefits, who would gladly spill their blood in the defense of their country, seeing their property destroyed, their families insulted, their lives endangered, their persons injured, and seeing nothing in prospect that forebodes a change for the better, they become tired of and disgusted with a government that offers them no protection, and are not much averse to a change in which they imagine they have nothing to lose." Close quote. In other words, riots and anarchy are violent, of course, in and of themselves, but they corrode something much more, all of us, and they take down the innocent with the guilty. Somewhere, somehow, we need to get back to a point that understands there is a better response than tearing down this temple of liberty when an offense comes. Somewhere, somehow, we need to be wary of rushing to extremes, both in language and responses to things we do not like. Somewhere, somehow, we have to remember we rule by ballot, not bullets here, and that though the word decency may be at great discount in our culture, this is still not yet Kabul or Xinjiang or Ramallah or Gaza City, and we don't want it to be. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.